So I made a lot of videos on Japanese chords and chord progressions, spanning across different genres of Japanese music like anime and city pop. So today I compiled a list of 7 levels of Japanese chords. I'm going to be building on a chord progression and make it sound more and more Japanese and advanced with each level. So let's get started. So before we get into any specific chords, let's lay down a Japanese sounding chord progression, one I've talked about in some of my other J-pop and K-pop videos, the 4-3-6 chord progression in the key of C, which would go like. And the first thing we're going to do, level 1, is to make these chords 7th chords, like. Sounds pretty cool already. So pretty simple actually, just adding in the 7th note to each chord in the progression. So on this first chord, the 4th chord in C, F major, lifting the index finger on the high E string to get that 7th note. There we got the F major 7th chord. And you can just play like this, but to further emphasize that major 7th sound, I also like to move my finger on the D string down 1 fret to get that major 7th note again. Now this chord is sounding so jazzy and just J-poppy. Then moving on to the second chord, the 3 chord in the key of C, the E minor chord. We just lift our ring finger from the D string for the 7th note. E minor 7th, pretty straightforward. And finally the 6th chord in the key of C, the A minor chord. But again here, we just lift our ring finger from the G string for the A minor 7th chord. But that was just level 1. Moving on, we're going to make the second chord in this chord progression, the 3 chord. A major chord. So overall it sounds something like. Just so neat. Basically all we do is that when we get to the second chord, this E minor chord, we put our index finger down the first fret of the G string to make it an E major chord, or E 7th chord to be exact, which gives it a really nice melancholic sound we hear a lot in Japanese music. I explained this on a lot of my other videos too, but the 3 chord of a key is usually played as a minor chord. In this case, E minor in the key of C. But when you make a major, it's like unexpectedly cool. One thing you can do here too to make the progression sound even cooler is that when we play this E chord, you can start off playing it minor first before making a major for extra flair, like. Pretty sick sound. After that, we're only halfway there. There's so much more we can do here. So on top of the 4-3-6 chords we played so far, I'm actually going to add a 4th chord, the iconic 5 minor chord, like. This is a super key Japanese sound I talked about in my video about the most popular Japanese chord progression of the 2020s, but here I'm just putting my thumb on the bass note of the 3rd fret on the low E string, and then bar my index finger on the 3rd fret of the D, G, B strings for this G minor 7th chord. Essentially the 5 chord of a key, in this case G chord in the key of C, is usually played as a major chord, G major, but if we make it minor, we get a really sweet emotional sound that Japanese music love, especially because the 5 chord of a key is known to be the tension chord, and minor chords known to be sadder too. Not to mention, we're making it a minor 7th chord too, along with the rest of the progression, versus just a regular minor chord. Further adding on to that jazzy Japanese sound. One thing we can do here too is to add the 1 chord, in this case C major chord in the key of C, after this 5 minor chord, and play each like half a bar for a cool sound like. This is that 2020s J-pop and anime sound I talked about on a lot of my other videos. These 2 chords that each occupy half a bar and played back to back. Awesome. Now there's more. Another chord we can add here that's also usually not part of a key is the 4 minor chord, like. Pretty cool. So at the end of the 4-3-6-5 chords, we go back to the 4 chord. But afterwards, we add in this 4 minor chord, which is just the same G minor 7th chord shape we had from earlier, but moved 2 frets down. So the 4 chord of a key, in this case F, is usually a major chord and often used as a transition chord within a chord progression. So usually it provides a lot of positive hope of like the excitement of a start of a journey. But by making a minor, it makes it a sad transition. So major and then minor. It's like a sad outlook on the future, that negative self-talk of like, it's all going to be downhill from here versus the original excitement. Anyhow, and the 1 or home chord of a key, in this case C major, is usually played after the 4 minor chord, like. Such a satisfying resolution going to the C major 7th chord, the 1 or home chord in the key. It's like, just as we thought everything was going to go bad with the 4 minor chord, we get the release of coming home with the 1 chord. Really common Japanese trick. Moving on to level 5, getting towards the end here, with the best for last, so make sure to stay for level 7, but here, we're going to add in what's known as a slash chord, like. So toward the end of this progression, to transition back to the 1 home chord, we play a transition chord in between to make it sound smoother, this F major on G chord. So all we do here is that we take the regular F major chord, but move the bass note on the low E string up 2 frets to a G note. This is what's known as a slash chord, a chord where we play a bass note that's not the root note of the original chord. So in this case, it's not an F bass note for the F major chord, but a G note. This chord works really well for transitioning back to the 1 chord, the C chord, because the 5 chord of a key, the G chord, has strong tension and desire to resolve back to the 1 chord. And in this case, even though we play the 4 chord, the F major chord instead, we're borrowing the root or bass note of the 5 chord, the G note. So kind of pretending to be a G chord, the 5 chord of a key, the chord that wants to resolve back to the 1 chord. That's why the transition sounds so smooth now with this F major on G slash chord. Anyway, now we got the second to last level, the secret chord used on a lot of anime songs like. This is what's known as the blackadder chord. In this case, we're playing the C blackadder chord. Without getting too deep into music theory, you can think of it as like a secret weapon you can use to replace any chord in a chord progression. So here, after we play the C major 7th chord, the 1 chord in a key as the final chord in the progression, we play the C blackadder chord for a cool sound at the end. There are 3 ways to play a blackadder chord. The first way is to find the root note on the D string, in this case 10th fret, the C note, then bar our entire index finger down, and pour our middle and ring fingers 1 fret up on the G and B strings for this high-pitched blackadder chord. A lower pitched variation is this one where we find the root note on the low A string, in this case 3rd fret, and then bar our index finger down, putting our middle finger 1 fret above on the D string. And a final variation of the chord is to put 1 finger on the root note on the low E string, in this case 8th fret, and then another finger 2 strings down, and then 1 finger barring 2 notes 1 fret down 2 strings below. Just a super neat chord trick, and they're commonly used at either the start or end of a chord progression, since they have a pretty strong sound. So if it's used in the middle of a progression, it'll be hard to kind of get back on track. Finally, the final level, level 7. So far we've mostly been playing 7th chords, whether they're like major 7th or minor 7th chords, but now we're going to add even more flavor by making some chords in the progression 9th chords, like. Just so flavorful. These are really common chords used on Japanese city pop, a genre of Japanese pop music in the 80s that was even more heavily influenced by jazz, with some calling it Japanese jazz pop. So here I didn't sub out all the 7 chords and make the 9th chord, since it's a pretty strong sound, just like the blackadder chord, so making every chord a 9th chord would be too much in my opinion. The only 2 chords I subbed out here for the 9th chords are the 4 and 6 chords, so F and A minor chords. So instead of playing this F major 7th chord to start off with, I just take the ring finger off and then move the middle finger up 1 fret for this F major 9th chord. Sounds pretty cool, leaving the high E string open as before. And instead of this A minor 7th chord, I talk about this chord on a lot of my other videos too, but we completely ditched the shape and just put our middle ring fingers on the 5th fret of the D and G strings, while letting all the other strings, open strings, ring out except for the low E string for this A minor 9th chord. There are many other ways to play 9th chords, so be sure to check out some of my other videos on K-pop and J-pop chords if you want to dive deeper into 9th chords, but when playing in the key of C, these 2 shapes are the coolest, since they make use of the open strings, which can only be done in the key of C and maybe like 1 or 2 other keys. That's why I chose to include them as part of this video. So those are 7 levels of Japanese chords. Comment down below your favorite ones or favorite Japanese songs. And if you want to learn more about other cool chords and tricks used on Japanese music, or even just pop music in general, be sure to check out these other videos as well. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.